Hey, this is Alex from Los Angeles.
And this is Karen from San Francisco. Welcome to Movies That Shaped Us, a journey of self-discovery through a shared love of film. We are two longtime friends who grew up on opposite ends of the globe with very different backgrounds, but were both shaped and are still being shaped by the movies we see and love. In each episode, we'll cover a topic around important people, places, events, and moments in our lives, and then explore it through three of our favorite movies. We hope these movies and topics are fun and revelatory to you, just like the way they've been for us. So with that, Alex, what's our topic for today?
So, listeners, the topic for today are movies that shaped our love of travel. Now, movies I don't know by definition, but they're all transportive in some way. You're going into someone else's life or going to another place in time, whether it's a fictional place or not. But what we wanted to focus on is really that aspect of travel. So this is movies that either like inspired us to travel. We think of ourselves when we are watching them in terms of places we maybe vacations we might have had in the past, or places we visited, or things we get out of travel. So these are not necessarily travel log movies, but they're movies that really do resonate with us when it came to our travel experience. And both of us do love to travel. I mean, maybe I don't want to speak for you too much, Karan, but I'll talk a little bit about how I came up with my list and just what I liked to travel. So, for me, I, do like traveling. These could be vacations where I'm just sitting on a beach and doing nothing, or, very, vacations where you're going to a bunch of museums and leading into a lot of the history, but then also those vacations where you're just absorbing the culture and there's not really much of necessarily an agenda. I mean, honestly, I enjoy all three of these types of travel. Just depends on the mood I'm in, the place I'm going, maybe the time of my life that I'm at as well. And sometimes you go potentially, or at least with me, of thinking this is going to be a just sit on the beach and do nothing bit of travel, and then you end up realizing it becomes another kind of that travel. So that's what I was doing when I was thinking about these films, thinking about, again, the different types of trips that I like taking, because it is a kind of a wide range. And then also there's a little bit of either places that I've visited in some of these films, or places these films have inspired me to then go visit places. There's a little bit of that personal connection there too, but it was mainly around the different types of traveling that I enjoy as someone who does like to travel, even though it's been tough during these COVID times. So I've had to travel a lot through the movies than in real life. But Karan, how did you kind of approach this, and what do you like out of travel?
Yeah, as somebody who grew up as an army brat, I've been moving around my whole life. So in some ways, travel has been imbued in my upbringing, if you will. But outside of that, seeking different places and, like you said, getting exposed to different cultures, people, food, sites, what have you, history, that's all been a big part of my life. And I love it. Couldn't get more of it. I really think and believe that the more you travel, you're better for it. I think for my framework, for my list of movies today, I think I was anchoring a little bit more around what does travel make me feel, and the different sort of core pillars, if you will, that have associated myself sort of grounded on when it comes to travel. And I'm being a little coy because if I talk more, I would sort of give it away.
Right.
Which I don't want to do. But yeah, like you said, there's a little bit of personal places as well. So yeah, very excited to go on this journey with you, pun intended.
Yeah, let's do it. Cool. So why don't we start off then with your number 3 film that captures your love of travel?
All right, sounds good. So my number 3 is a little movie called Bourne Identity. The quick IMDb log line, by the way, this movie's from 2002, directed by Doug Liman, starring obviously Matt Damon, Chris Cooper, Franca Potente, a bunch of other people. But the quick log line is: a man is picked up by a fishing boat, bullet riddled and suffering from amnesia, before racing to elude assassins and attempting to regain his memory. So I watched this movie when I was in undergrad, and I remember watching this movie with a whole bunch of college friends. honestly not really caring or really even understanding what the plot of the movie
Uh-huh.
was. But I think this movie really started my love of movies that what I call do sort of the globe hopping thing, where
Hmm.
suddenly, lettering would appear on the screen on the bottom right or the bottom left saying, "You are here, you are here." And I don't know, I just find that so thrilling. I always have. It sort of speaks to my sort of adventure person, whatever, or travel monkey person that might be living inside me.
Uh-huh.
And I just love that. It's sort of a passport to the world. And that's all I remember. There are a million such movies, usually spy thrillers, Bond, blah, blah, blah. But I sort of trace it all back to this movie
Oh,
where
okay.
that really started for me. And since then, especially Pierce Brosnan's Bond uh, section, all of it to me is like a passport travel. I don't
Mm-hmm.
remember anything from any of those movies, but this is actually a brilliant movie too. So that's why this is on the list. I rewatched it recently just in preparation for this podcast and was
Mm-hmm.
blown away by like how much this movie holds up and how brilliant it is. And I think now in retrospect, and now that we're doing these podcasts, I think it spoke to me at a deeper level, which is sort of this feeling of being a foreigner, but sort of blending into another place in a very day to day casual way. Like
Hmm.
this movie doesn't romanticize the beautiful locales of Europe or wherever you're at. You are at these places, but it's very handheldy. It's very much guy on the street, girl on the street, having interactions. And that's something that speaks to me as a traveler.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that speaks to me in watching the movie again is sort of there's a sense of urgency and frantic pacing to the movie. Like you're dropped into it right off the bat. And it speaks to that side of me as a traveler that wants to pack in everything because I know I'm
Right.
only there for 2 days. And you sort of fish out of water a little bit in this new place. So I think it captures that energy for me. And the fish out of water thing is interesting too, because Matt Damon's character is literally a fish out of water. He doesn't remember anything, but
Right.
obviously he's very adept at navigating whatever he has to navigate. So there's a little bit of that too, that resonates with me as a traveler. When you drop in somewhere, you don't really know where you're going, what you're doing, but the drive and sort of just the excitement of being there sort of pushes you through, and you're willing to do whatever you have to do to see and pack in as much. So I think it captures that intensity and energy for me. But otherwise, as a movie, I think this is top tier Matt Damon. I can't see anybody else in this movie. I mean, I love Bond for sure, but
Mm-hmm.
to me, this is probably my favorite when it comes to these kind of movies. Great ensemble cast. We talk a lot about mise en scène on this podcast. What an incredible score. It's just beautifully shot. The plot actually does make sense, but it's
Mm-hmm.
the right balance of, intricacies, but yet not sort of getting so, up there in your head that you sort of are lost. There's enough breadth in a fast-paced movie to kind of enjoy where you're at and be with the people and be at the places you're in. So insanely rewatchable. And I'm so glad that I came back and watched this movie. And now this is going to be on my rewatchable list. And I guess the last thing I would say here is that, well, actually, two things. The second Bourne movie was shot in Goa in India. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember sort of watching that because at that time I was in India and sort of seeing that, oh my gosh, like a Hollywood big production is shot here. So I have a bit of that personal connection with this movie. And then, yeah, the last thing I would just say is that I think this movie fueled my desire to kind of take these trips and
Mm-hmm.
put myself outside of my comfort zone. So yeah, that's Born Identity, my number three.
Cool. Yeah, this movie I like a lot as well. In terms of the travel piece of it, it is interesting. Like you mentioned Bond too, and it's hard to bring up Bourne and not compare them to Bond, but those films are the Bond films, not only just the Brosnan ones, but really just dating back all the way to Connery, are travelogue films. They're globe-trotting films. They go around the world. Oh, here's the Bahamas, here's the
Right.
North Africa, India, etc. and they always look amazing. And Bond looks cool, and there's nice, expensive hotels, and like you want to go to all these places. And contrasting it with this movie, which goes to some cool places, right? Like Mediterranean, Switzerland, Paris, Greece, but they look very like run down, realistic, unglamorized is probably the best way to put it. Which, you know, you go to some of these places, it's not going to look like you go. It's not like you're James Bond. You're going to be in the hostel sometimes. You're not going to be in like the 10-star hotels. So I love how that contrast just brings a lot of the more like real world grittiness.
It's not romanticized at all.
Not at all. Not at all. I mean, the big action car chase sequence in this film, he's in like this crummy little like European car that's like kind of a piece of shit. You know, a Bond movie, he'd be driving around in some incredible like Aston Martin, and so like, even that action sequence is very gritty, which I think, you know, this movie does a really good job as being a globetrotting travelogue film, but not romanticizing the locations for sure. And I agree with all the things you said just about the score being great. John Powell did a great job. I actually like the score for the second one even more. I think he did.
That's the one I've been listening to since I watched, because I watched all three not all three, but three of them back to back after I rewatched this one.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And personally, like, I remember seeing this film in the theaters, thought it was okay. Like, it didn't immediately, like, a lot of my friends were like, oh my God, Bourne's incredible. Like, yeah, it was fine. And it wasn't until I saw the second film, and then I was like, oh my gosh, like, what Greengrass did in that film and then the third one just really blew me. I went back and then would watch this, and I feel like now it's kind of a better film because of the subsequent ones. But yeah, I mean, this film is, again, a great spy thriller. Definitely holds up 20 years later. Damon does a great job. I mean, all the things you said, I definitely like second. But just interesting, just with that gritty realism, which, you know, sometimes you go to these places in real life and they're not like they are in the movies. I think this movie does a good job of that.
Yeah, totally. Well, glad to hear it. What is your number three?
So my number three, actually a little bit of a connection into yours, like the end of all the Bourne films has that really cool Moby track at the end. And the movie I'm about to bring up also has a good Moby track in it as well. It's 2000's The Beach. And this movie was directed by Danny Boyle, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, Tilda Swinton, Robert Carlyle. The plot summary from IMDb: on a vacation in Thailand, Richard sets out for an island rumored to be a solitary beach paradise. So this is a film, much like the plot description talks about it. It's Leonardo DiCaprio is essentially just a traveler looking for adventure. And what I think this film does a good job in capturing for me is that sense that travel is a way to experience new things you wouldn't do at home. You're more adventurous when you're out there and travel. Sometimes you're seeking these different experiences that are things you can't get just when you're at home. In the beginning of the movie, he goes to Thailand and is basically, there's some line in it like, oh, if it hurts me to do something, then it's worth it. He's drinking like snake blood or venom blood, or I don't remember what that was. Like, he's trying to push himself a lot. I mean, you don't really know too much about his background, but you kind of assume he's, you know, a middle class to rich kind of kid growing up, kind of usually probably isn't in situations where his life is put in danger. And he's trying then to use this travel and this vacation as a way to do that. Like, he's searching for the things that are not touristy. He's trying to find the things that are authentic, and he associates that with danger, which is definitely something, you know, when I'm on a doing traveling, it's something where sometimes I'm feeling, okay, I want to capture like quote unquote, like the real whatever city I'm in or something. And a lot of times it is sort of pushing yourself a little bit and trying to get outside of your comfort zone, which is definitely something that Leonardo DiCaprio's character in this movie does. There's also that sense of travel companions. Like, he meets a young French couple in this hostel or hotel that he's at. And, you know, I've definitely on favorite vacations I've had, sort of, you meet people out and you sort of spend a day or something with them. And then, you know, they're your companions for about a day, and then you kind of never see them again, which is, I think, another thing that this movie does a really good job in capturing. But so in this film, though, like Leo, like the script says, he goes off to this beach paradise. He's trying to find this incredible place that is sort of this destination that is hard to find. He finds his map, and then he eventually gets there. And it is this incredible beach location. And it is definitely something, but then there's a dark side to it. There's a community there of basically ex-travelers who are setting up this commune. And there's a lot of, you know, moral decisions he then has to make when he's there. And I think what this really does is make you think about like that price of paradise. And when you go off and you travel and you see a location that's great, you go on a great experience, sometimes that is not always what it's cracked up to be. You can't stay there forever. Like, which is another theme of this movie. I think they do a really good job of capturing too. That when you go on these vacations or do these travel, I shouldn't really use the word vacation. It's more travel. This is only a temporary thing. Like, you can't be there forever, because then all of a sudden the downsides and the dark sides start coming up of wherever you are. And when you're traveling, it's not your home, right? So you only are seeing kind of the good sides of it. And I think this movie helps show, like, if you do stay there for a long time, you start realizing that there are problems here too. Like, there is no such thing as that paradise. Though there is a line, I think it was like towards the end of the movie, where Leo's basically saying, like, oh, he still believes in paradise, but now he knows it's not a place, it's not a destination. It's when you have these amazing moments in your life, that memory is like that paradise. Which is a nice positive message too in this film. So I do think this, again, does a really good job of capturing that as well, that you can try to find that perfect place, but really it's, you just visit a place that's great, and it's that memory you have of that travel experience and what you experience there. That is really the paradise. Holding on to that. But and then on a personal note, I went to Thailand after I'd seen this movie like 10 years later or something. I had to go to this beach, so I did actually go there.
Oh wow!
And which was really cool, like, to see it. There's a couple changes they made in the movie, like adding some more mountains to make it seem a little more secluded. So it's not 100% exactly what it looks like in the film, but it's still pretty cool. And then even like a little bit of a meta comment, I guess, in a way of like the dark side of paradise, I guess. So this beach, I don't think was necessarily really that famous until it was put in this movie, and then it got overrun by tourists. So much so they had to close it down. There's actually even a lawsuit that happened between the Thai government and Fox, who produced the film, where Fox like destroyed the beach to film on it. They like bulldozed some trees, some sand dunes. I mean, it was like I don't remember where the lawsuit ended up. It was going on for like 10 years. And just recently now, I think you can go back, but it's like X number of people a year, like they're limiting it. So again, this sort of shows that, paradise can be also ruined, and that it's not exactly always perfect, just like this production showed. So, as a movie, like, I saw this when it came out. I thought it was okay. I really liked the first two acts better than it ended. And then actually hadn't seen this movie. Even when I went to this beach, I didn't rewatch it going to the beach. I just went. I actually didn't even rewatch it when I got back. This is the first time I've kind of sat through this whole movie since seeing it, I guess, for the first time, probably. And I was actually surprised how well it sort of held up. I mean, I still had a little bit of a problem with the third act of it, but it was in a way kind of better than I remembered it. So I almost would, in an odd way, kind of recommend this movie, which I might not have done had I not just rewatched it. But yeah, that's the beach for me, number 3.
Yeah, I had actually never watched this movie before. It was sort of much maligned from what I'd heard about it, so I just kind of stayed away from it.
Yeah.
But I have to say, I was pleasantly surprised. Maybe I just came in with very low expectations from what I'd heard, but I was actually pretty entertained by the whole thing, and kind of spot on whatever you were saying. I agree with it. What I would add to that is, I think the movie also does a pretty good job at calling out this sense of kind of responsibility, or I guess lack thereof, when it comes to tourists, which sort of goes into the meta commentary part with Fox that you're talking about too, that, a lot of people, when they travel, and there's a spectrum to this too, maybe I'm guilty of it too, that you sort of telling yourself that, oh, I want the real thing, but you're kind of pursuing that in a very selfish, irresponsible way, because the people who live there, this is their real life. So by you sort of, prancing around and doing your thing for the spirit of authenticity is actually sort of at the cost of something else, which net then in that, I don't know how authentic that is in some ways, right? Because it's fabricated in it's your projection of whatever authentic means, and especially if it comes at a cost of something else. So I think the movie does a pretty good job at that feeling. And I don't even know about the Fox part, but it just adds another layer to it. So that's pretty cool. It's also great to see Leo at that time. He was the biggest star. I mean, probably still is in some ways. We don't have movie stars anymore, but for all accounts, he's probably in that list. But it's good to see him in that time frame of his life, of sort of being, just cool and cocky and sure of himself, which again is a meta commentary on traveling. Like, a lot of people who feel like they've traveled a lot or will try anything, yeah, you applaud them for their gutsiness, but I also cringe at it a little bit,
Right.
because it's like, oh, sure, great, you can drink snake blood, that's fantastic, good for you, So I don't know. The movie hit me on different ways, which was really fun. Great to see Tilda Swinton. I hadn't seen a movie of her, especially in Hollywood, when she was younger. So that was pretty cool to watch as well. The beach is beautiful. The movie is made super well. Yeah, the third act is a bit of a drag. The first act is probably my favorite
Oh,
because you're
totally.
just thrown into it and you're like, what the hell is even happening? So yeah, I do recommend it. Strangely, I didn't think I would, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I like the point you made about that inauthentic experience, and it's interesting too because like I said in the beginning of the film, Leo's like, I want the real, like I don't want something touristy, I want the real
Right.
Thailand, and yet then he ends up at a beach that's literally all tourists in a
Yeah,
community.
exactly.
Like it's the exact opposite of what he was looking for, and I do think that is sort of a comment on a
Yeah.
type of traveler of, oh, I want the real thing, but you're not living there, you're not part of that culture, you can't
No.
really experience it the same way they can.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good point you made, that I think the film does a good job of just bringing those things up. I mean, I don't think it's judging it one way or the other, but saying, look, you're looking for this. You found kind of the exact you might
You
as well
found
have
the
been,
opposite.
in like a bar in London meeting these same people. You're not really, in touch with the culture, but
Absolutely. Also, the only people on the island are hot people. Nobody else. There's no person who's overweight. There's no
right.
person who looks not good. So yeah,
It's a paradise,
it's a
but it comes at
paradise.
a cost. Yeah. Yeah.
Actually, it's funny. It made me think of, a string of these reality TV shows from the last 20 years of where you're at some island. I mean, of course,
Oh,
Survivor, but also, Bachelor in Paradise or whatever the dating shows, etc. It made me think of that a little bit. And I was wondering if they were inspired by this movie in some ways or not.
interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think the first season of Survivor came out the same year of this show,
Ah,
so
there
it
you
was
go.
right around that. I don't. Yeah, I'm not a fan of that show. I don't know the history behind it, other than that came out roughly the same time. They definitely
Mm.
could have been influenced by this for sure. It did feel like that a lot. I mean, setting up a little society and
Yeah.
yeah, very interesting. Cool. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it, and yeah, I was sort of also surprised to kind of say, yeah, I recommend seeing the beach. And going there too if you can. Just again following all the rules and making
Yes.
sure that. But great. So what's your number two?
All right. So my number two is Midnight in Paris from 2011, directed by Woody Allen, starring Owen Wilson, Rachel McAdams, Kathy Bates, and a whole bunch of great people. Quick log line. While on a trip to Paris with his fiancee's family, a nostalgic screenwriter finds himself mysteriously going back to the 1920s every day at midnight. So I put this movie for kind of bunch of reasons. One of them, it speaks to sort of my way of traveling where I love getting lost in the rabbit hole of history. And which is not to say that I'm reading, the notices or the maps or the guides at museums or palaces. I'm actually not a good reader, so I don't read much, but I feel my way through it. I imagine as I'm walking through the Louvre or wherever and looking at a setup of somebody's bedroom and imagining, oh, what would it feel like to kind of be in that room, what conversations would you have? And I think this movie does a great job of sort of just transporting you back with all these amazing giants and icons of literature and music and such, sort of in regular settings where they're just having parties and dancing around and having conversations, and you sort of get a bit of a peek into that world. And I just love that. It speaks to me. The other thing that it speaks to me on is when you're traveling with people who are not on your wavelength. And I've definitely had that experience. Of course, the movie is heightened in that regard. It's sort of playing on archetypes, which movies do. And
Right.
that's the point. It comes off, it can be a mean movie. You've expressed this in the past. So I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on this. But some of the people in the movie are just mean for really no reason. But that to me is the joke, if you will. It's the point of the movie. And it sort of harkens back to my travels from before, where I've traveled with people who are just, I'm not saying who's right or wrong, but just different, and how excruciating that can be. And what comes out of it is the joy of sometimes just traveling alone. and what that feels like. So yeah, this movie speaks to me on all those levels. Clearly this movie is in love with Paris, which, I don't know, this is sort of my maybe definition of what is a good travel movie, is that after the movie is over, you want to go to that place badly. You want to eat its food badly
Right.
immediately.
Yep.
And I think this movie really does that. The beginning montage in Paris and all the different places with incredible music and score and everything is just scrumptious and palpable, transports you there completely, but also establishes this conflict right off the bat. The people who are romantics about travel and the people who are practical. And it's interesting, I watched this movie when it came out and I loved it. And for years and years, I was Team Owen Wilson, because I am a little bit of that person. I am nostalgic about things. I am romantic about travel. I love walking around, getting lost on streets, talking to people at the bar, getting invited to some random party. Over time, as I gain confidence to travel, even joining those people, who I've just met. And that to me is, we just were talking about real travel. I call that my version of real travel, even though it's my own fabrication. But I sort of feel like, oh, I spent like an evening with Parisians, at their home or at their backyard drinking wine. How real is this? So I love that for sure. But over time, as I've grown older, I think the practicalities of travel mean more to me than they did in the past, where, yeah, walking in the rain, no matter where you're at, is actually not great.
You'll get
Or,
wet. Yeah.
yeah. Or eating French food every single day, every single meal is probably not great, because I would just get bored. I would want something else. And I've had Chinese food actually in Paris, which was very interesting. So I think it's funny how the way I've grown in my relationship with travel has changed a little bit. I still tip over to the Owen Wilson side for sure. I think I will always be that in some way or the other. But yeah, love this movie. Gorgeously made, incredible cast. Everybody brings their A game. And yeah, you get to, like, my favorite part about travel movies are when you're not just shown the sights, but you're seeing the sights through the eyes of the people who are in it. Like, it's why travel shows are the ones that are good is because you see the people in the movie appreciate what they're seeing. So you sort of vicariously travel, with them. And I think this movie does a great job at that. So yeah, highly recommend it. I know Woody Allen, problematic, what have you, but I think off his late career, this movie and a few others sort of are, in my top movies, if you will. And you can put it on any day of the week, really. So yeah.
Not just at midnight.
Not just at midnight.
Any time of the day. Cool. Yeah. So I had not seen this film before. I'll get into my thoughts like on the film overall in a bit. But just responding, first of all, I think it's a great pick. I think responding to a lot of what you said, especially that opening montage, I timed it too. It's like 3 minutes long. The movie starts, no dialogue, no actors, anything. It's literally just like shots of, famous parts of Paris, just not famous parts of Paris over this great soundtrack, which I think was definitely, for me personally, the standout of the film was the soundtrack was great. A lot of, old timey French music from different periods. But yeah, it really did capture not only Paris, but like you said, the different versions of travelers. There's the Owen Wilson, who's just there to like absorb everything in the culture. There's I guess one of their friends who's like an academic. So he's very much like, I want to go to the museum.
The pedantic gentleman.
Yeah.
My
read
favorite
everything.
line.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely. That's that archetype, right? And then his wife or fiance, I think, who she's basically there doing things that she could do back at home. Like, I'll just go to the spa. Oh, I'm going to hang out with all the friends that I already know. It's like those types of travelers that aren't really they're somewhere else geographically, but they're not anywhere else like mentally or in their activity. She's not like trying to drink anything in. And those three different types of traveler, for me personally, like I've been each one of those depending on the trip and the place. But I definitely gravitate, much like you, more to like the Owen Wilson side of things in terms of how he approaches the travel. So I thought that was, a good kind of comment on the different types of traveler. This could not necessarily just for Paris. It could be anywhere, right? But yeah, like in terms of the film. So again, caveat I always have to make: not a Woody Allen fan. Again, nothing to do with problematic. I just don't like really his films. This is actually a film when it came out that I remember a lot of my friends who knew that I don't like Woody Allen were trying to encourage me to see this. Because like, oh, I think you would like this. Like, it's not, a typical whatever. Like, you should see this. You should see this. It was actually on a list of mine to try to see before the Oscars because it got some nominations. And then I just didn't bother getting around to seeing it. So I just never did. And, I have to say I didn't dislike it. I think it's, some of it was a little too cheesy with the literary figures he was meeting. Also, too, I'll admit that a lot of that went over my head too. Like that type of art, like novelists and painters of that period of time, like beginning of the 20th century. I just don't know a lot about it. So like if I see so and so, I'm like, okay, like this is not like I can't like respond to that or be a fanboy to it like Wilson was. But some of that stuff came off a little cheesy, but again, I think it just went over my head. But I did like the message of nostalgia in the film. I think that they were definitely trying to make that point of you might think the past is better than the present, but really it's not. Which is, I definitely agree with that. Similar to like the beach in a way. It's like you think something might be paradise, but really like it's not necessarily always that. No. So that message I think was well done and resonated with me. But yeah, well, and then you get the typical Woody Allen, like a man who's like, there's like the shrew woman character that he finally gets rid of and meets like the most perfect girl that he basically designed the perfect person that he wants. Right. That's just something you'll find in it. So that's what happens in this movie. He loses his shrew fiance and finds like the perfect woman and this woman on the street at the end. But that's just Woody Allen. That's what he always tends to do. Yeah. But no, it was transportive. I mean, I've been to Paris a couple times and definitely I think captures why that city's so great and why I like going back to it. So yeah, the Paris at night is really cool. And I think that's most of the movie takes place during that time. But yeah, I'm glad I saw it. I guess it was a little better than I don't know. I didn't really have much expectations going into it other than just my friends telling me like, you should see this. You just put all the Woody Allen stuff aside. I think Owen Wilson does a decent job as he's like good and very good as the Woody character. Every central character is always Woody Allen. Yep. And if he was still in his 40s, he would have played that, and he does a decent job as the Woody Allen surrogate in it. But yeah, I'd, if you like Paris, I definitely do also recommend seeing this, if not just for the opening 3 minutes. I thought were really touching.
I often watch that on YouTube just because I want to get transported because it's so wonderful. Yeah, I think it's interesting. Like I definitely have a connection with sort of literary icons from that time. So for me, watching this movie the first time, and I still kind of catch myself in all the thought that you could meet Cole Porter just like sitting around and like singing and playing music, like lose my mind totally, so I connect to that aspect. Of course it's cheesy, but to me as a plot device and as a set piece from a narration standpoint, it does work. For the time is for the point is trying to make, which you said, which is that you can't keep running away from the present. That said, what I take away from the movie, and this is why I think, he meets the perfectly designed girl at the end. I don't know if they end up together or no, but I do think that it makes that subtle point. I don't know how subtle it is that, you can't keep going back to the past, but you can meet people who appreciate that. And you can create moments of the past in the present. So the two of them bonding on Cole Porter, I don't know if that's all they're going to talk about, or maybe that's all they're going to talk about and that would be it. And it wouldn't really be a relationship. But I think that's the part you kind of carry forward with you. Just the way you were talking about the strangers you meet, when you're traveling, you're not from there, but you connect on something very specific. And that sometimes that specific thing can be nostalgia. We all have a little bit of that in us. So yeah, I think that's what the movie tries to make a point about.
No, I agree. And I think it's, again, just it's just apparent that it's Woody Allen is always the central character in his films, and he's sort of like giving himself a gift at the end for being, getting rewarded for being Woody Allen. And that is, again, something just for me personally. Like, I see that in so many of his films. I'm like, I know what you're doing here, Woody. Like, you're inventing, a scenario to give yourself a little reward in the form of a. But anyway, yeah. Now we're getting too much of the Woody Allen aspect of it. But yeah, I think this is a great movie that captures Paris. And I will say too, it's very sad seeing like the shots of like Notre Dame, just based on like the fire that happened there a couple years back. It was actually, oh man, it like made me sad to see that because of what happened to that structure. But
all right, what is your next?
So my number 2 is the Darjeeling Limited from 2007. This is film directed by Wes Anderson, starring Adrian Brody. Owen Wilson again. He makes our list twice. I guess he's a good traveler.
Adrian Brody is also in Midnight in Paris. So.
Oh, that's right. He is. You're totally right. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. I don't know what this means, but
he plays Dali.
Yeah. Is Jason
Rhinoceros?
Is Jason Schwartzman in that too? I don't know. No. Or he was in some. Anyway, so Schwartzman was in this one, and Angelica Houston. The IMDb plot summary: a year after their father's funeral, 3 brothers travel across India by train in an attempt to bond with each other. So why I put this one on the list, and what I think this captures for me, it's an element of travel, is that travel takes you away from your home, like where you are, to help you better address or look at the problems that exist in your life and grow in maybe areas you need to grow in, but being in your home environment kind of holds you back a little bit from that. And then how travel really can teaches you that also, like, life is about the journey and not like a destination. You might be going to a particular place when you travel, but it's really that journey along the way of as you're going through that trip and what it's leaving with you in terms of impressions on your personality that I think is important. And I think this movie does a great job of capturing that. So, like the plot summary said, these are 3 brothers from the US, and their father just died. And now they're going off to India to these are brothers that haven't really got along recently. And they're all dealing with their father's death in a different way. Actually, the movie kind of makes a very obvious point with this, where they're all taking around bags, like literal baggage that belong to their father. So this is literally the baggage of dealing with both their emotions of losing their dad, but then also their emotions of infighting might be too strong of a word, the problems that they have just as brothers with each other. And I think, again, with this film, over the course of it, there is much like the movie we just talked about, Midnight in Paris, where actually Owen Wilson plays the opposite type of character. He's the guy who has an agenda. Okay, we got to go here. We got to go here. He's seeing this trip as much like the character that he didn't like in Midnight in Paris, right? As, travel's not about the journey. So we've got to go to each of these destinations, do these little things. He prints out agendas, trying to, plan things. And, that is, I think, what he learns in this film through this journey is that's not necessarily the best way, not only to go through a trip, but also go through life. And I think that, to me, of the over planner, that goes on the trip and realizes that's not something that's good for him, is just an encapsulation of all the journeys that each of the brothers go through in this film. And then actually the final sequence is they're literally like dropping the bags of their dad. I mean, it's kind of obvious what's going on here, but they drop the bags of their father to finally get on a train together. So they're accomplishing something together by letting go of the past and then continuing on that journey. So, there's also a lot of great, scenery in this, capturing countrysides of India. I think it's the north. You might know this better than me in terms of where this took place. I think it's the northern part, northern part. And also a great score as well. That's, or not great a score, soundtrack that's using a lot of, again, you know better than me. These are famous tracks from famous Indian movies or not, but it's a lot of local music that he uses in this. And also there's a sense of a train. I mean, I've been on a couple trips where you travel on a train, and there's a romanticism to that, of watching the kind of scenery go by. It's a different way to drink in where you're at. And so I wanted to put, one train film on this list that kind of captures that. I think, again, this is really just about how you grow through travel, and that being out of your home just helps you discover things about yourself. I think this movie does a great job with that.
Yeah, I love that's the angle you chose for this movie, and that comes through very strongly. Again, I had not watched this movie before,
Oh, okay.
even though I'm a big Wes Anderson fan, but I just heard that this is sort of his not very successful movies, was
Right.
not rated super well, kind of darker and what have you. So I sort of, kept away from it. Also, any movie sort of that's based on somewhere that I grew up in,
Yeah,
I don't know why
totally.
that automatically goes to the bottom of the list because for whatever reason, I don't know why.
No, I get that. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm very glad that I watched it. To be honest with you, I think I need to watch this movie again to like really fully process it because in classic Wes Anderson fashion, right? Like you're dealing with the themes of the movie and the characters, but also, the mise en scène, if you will.
Right. The
I
production, the
don't
design.
think he's at the level that he is now with Grand Budapest and such, where you're entering a jewel box and a Russian doll from story, but also from like a visual standpoint. Like that's not really
Hmm.
happening, but there are beginnings of that. It feels a lot more real as compared to how his movies are today. Like I do recognize the yellow boards of the station names and the STD ISD kind of phone call booths. That's how they are.
Yeah.
But somebody who's probably never been to India, they might think this is just Wes Anderson's romanticized view of jewel box Russian doll treatment. So there are motifs like that, but it's pretty real in that sense.
Oh, okay.
Which is pretty cool. The train is beautiful. The dining car, I was sort of a gasp when they enter the dining car with all the lights and the
Yeah.
chandeliers and all. That's a beautiful shot. But yeah, the themes of the movie that you said definitely hit hard and everyone performed really well. It's beautifully made. I think the thing that I'm still wrestling with is, could this movie have been shot anywhere as
Ah,
compared to be in India? And that's the part which no, I'm not saying any filmmaker needs to like interrogate or investigate the place that they are in, but I think when you're carrying so much baggage literally and in all aspects, and you're going through a country which is so unique, and you rub off of the uniqueness every now and then, but I just think even Wes would say this probably, who knows, that if he made this movie now, it would be a lot richer. You look at Grand Budapest, some of his newer movies, like you really get a sense of place that's sort of entangled with what is happening. And I'm not saying it's not happening at all here, but
right.
I and maybe that's why I need to watch the movie again to fully appreciate it. But it left me lukewarm, if I'm
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
how I would put it, the movie itself.
Yeah. I agree with you in the sense of it could have taken place somewhere else. I think the India piece, might even be problematic in this sense. Like that is a country, at least from the West, is viewed a lot as a spiritual place that you go on some spiritual
Mm-hmm.
journey. So I think from that standpoint, through a Western lens, that's probably why he chose India.
Which is fine. I mean, I don't have issues
No,
with that,
right.
Yeah.
But I think it's not like a movie that I've been a couple times and luckily to go with you, you show me around a little bit, which is really
Mm-hmm.
fun and exciting. I love India. I want to go back and spend more time there. But yeah, it wasn't like I watched this now having been to India where it feels like, oh, I'm back there in every scene. It's not necessarily that. But I think an interesting point too about you were making around that it seemed like a dialed back Wes Anderson. This is the first movie that he made after Life Aquatic, which
Right.
was a failure for him. And I think he was trying to purposely, because that movie is very like
Very dialed up.
quote
I can't
unquote
even watch.
Wes
Yeah.
Anderson. It's like so extreme, Life
Can't
Aquatic in
watch
terms
it.
of what he's
Too
doing. Right,
much.
right. So I think he was purposely trying. I actually remember when I saw this for the first time, and it aged more with me. Like the more I see it, the more I like it.
Yeah.
But being like, whoa, this doesn't feel like him at all. Like it's like he dropped all the pretense. Though now I
Mm-hmm.
can look and see enough of that in there. I think for what this movie's trying to do, doing it too
Mm-hmm.
much would kind of lose the heart of the emotion of this. But yeah, it's like not surprised you hadn't seen it. It's looked on as not one of his strongest works. I personally think it's underrated and like it better, I
Mm-hmm.
think, than most people do, or at least when they place it in his filmography. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like for me, just about the travel as a journey to find oneself, I think this does a good job
Yeah.
of capturing that. So that's why I had to
That
choose it.
totally comes across. And that's another good point. Like, we talk about this a lot on the podcast. Like,
Mhm.
when do you come to the movies that you come to?
Totally.
Like I think Midnight in Paris was probably the first Woody Allen movie I watched. I had
Oh,
no
interesting. Oh, okay.
preconceived ideas about who this person is. And
Uh-huh.
like you were saying, how they, give themselves a gift at the end of the movie. I
Yeah.
had no idea. Of course, now I know it. So, there's a lot of that happening. So, but I do want to go and check this movie back again. So I'm very happy that I watched it. I've been listening to the soundtrack since, which is very cool. So yeah.
Yeah. One question then on the soundtrack. Are those like famous
Sort
films
of.
or
I didn't
okay.
recognize any of them other than one song, but I looked at the credits. So they're from Satyajit Ray's movies, which I have not watched. I've seen maybe one of them, which is,
Okay.
shameful. Probably I should go and watch Pathar Panchali and all these great, movies, but they're all from his movies, I think,
Oh,
or
okay.
composed by him or from his movies or something like that. Yeah.
Do you know why maybe he chose that particular filmmaker to
I mean, Satyajit Ray is sort of India's export to the auteur
Oh, okay.
bracket, if you will. Like, he has an honorary Oscar, and his movies are, kind of looked at in that pantheon with Kurosawa and such.
Oh,
So it's a
okay.
very sort of specific brand of movies. It doesn't get more arty and rich and deep than Satyajit Ray. So maybe that's why.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd never heard of that filmmaker, so I'll have to check
Yeah.
out some of his stuff. It sounds like I would like his
Yeah. A
films. At least.
regular Criterion Channel
Oh,
feature.
okay. Okay, great. Yeah, I'll definitely have to check that out. Cool.
Yeah.
So I think we're nearing number one now. So what is your number one movie that shaped your love of travel?
Yeah. So my number one is a movie called Summertime from 1955, directed by David Lean, starring Katherine Hepburn. And a quick logline: an American spinster's dream of romance finally become bittersweet reality when she meets a handsome but married Italian man when vacationing in Venice. Not the best logline, but oh well. So this movie, oh gosh, I'll have to kind of compose my thoughts because this movie definitely means a lot to me in so many
Mm-hmm.
ways. But really, what it comes down to is this movie captures for me the wonder of travel and the loneliness that comes with it. In my last movie pick, I was talking about sometimes traveling alone is pretty great because you get to kind of do your own thing. But with it comes a lot of loneliness. So this moment when you made it to the place which you've been wanting to go to, you shuttle from the airport shuttle van from the airport, from the plane to the actual airport. You're sort of giddy, excited, feeling kind of icky and dirty and what have you, and then you finally make it to the hotel and you've showered. Until that moment, the excitement, the giddiness, and a slight nervousness of like, what's this going to be like, is all there with you.
Mm-hmm.
And then the moment you've taken your shower and you look outside the window, that's the moment where it suddenly hits you, at least it hits me in my alone travels, that this is probably a big mistake. Why am I here? I'm
Yeah.
alone by myself. There's no one with me. Everyone's going to be looking at me. I'm going to be walking around on my own. Should probably just go back or just go back to bed. So of course you power through that fleeting moment, and then it's all wonderful, and you take those first steps out of the hotel after you showered and you're ready, and then the sights, the culture, the smells, the people, the sounds, it all sort of takes over, and
Mm-hmm.
and you're happy and excited to be there for sure. But I think this movie captures that so well. Obviously, this is David Lean who we are talking about, so as a movie, like, it's a grand movie for how it's shot and how it's made, and it's sort
Mm-hmm.
of totally transportive in every way, all departments firing at all cylinders. But it's also a very intimate, unglamorized movie for the fact that it's from the 50s and it's in Venice, which could be glamorized and has been in the movies like crazy. And I think, and it is, but I don't know, it feels very real to me. And I think it comes down to Hepburn's performance, I think,
Yeah.
where There's not much exposition on who this woman is. What did she do? What's her life? Who are her friends? Was she married? Does she have kids? You don't really know much about her, but you see all of it on her face. Like, this is somebody who's built a life. This has been a lifelong dream, is excited and giddy to be there, but at the same time is so vulnerable because she's carrying that baggage of her life with her. And I think this movie does a great job at, when you're in a new place, how you wrestle with what that place has to offer.
Right.
Whether it's new people who might feel charming or interesting, do you go with them or not? Do you step outside the comfort zone and try something new or not? Um, you know, and just the baggage that you bring with yourself. I mean, you've talked about this in your movies too, that travel is an escape for sure, but it's only an escape so far, right? Like,
Right.
your real life is still always with you. It doesn't take much for a line or a moment or a sound that takes you back to your real life, even though you're not at home. That sometimes can bring a happy memory or sometimes can bring a sad memory. And suddenly, even though you might be in front of the most beautiful location, eating gelato or whatever, and you suddenly still are lonely and sad because somehow that moment has brought up some other feelings from your past, that, oh, how I've been single, all this time, or how I was cheated by somebody else and now this person is
Right.
advancing at me, and all of it, right? So I think that's what this movie is so special, that it's just so real and grounded in this sort of unreal setting. Venice is kind of unreal
Mm-hmm.
if you think about it, so it's by design. I think that they chose this city or this place as this at the backdrop, or really the subject of the movie. So yeah, I just love it. I Every time I watch it, I pick something new. It's also very funny. It's also the little urchin boy that she forms the friendship with is just so hilarious to me. There's something sad about that, but also very charming about that. The other American tourists that you meet
Oh yeah.
throughout the journey, some are annoying, and all the stereotypes that we've talked about throughout this podcast. You see a little bit of
Oh,
that.
definitely.
um, and then just on a personal note, so me and my family, right before I came to the US, we did like a big Europe trip, and Venice was one of the locations. And my mom and dad were already there for some of my dad's work, and my sister and I then joined them in Europe, in Switzerland, and then we took trains to other places. And I'd forgotten how much baggage that they'd taken with themselves, because they were going to formal events, so they had lots of
Oh
clothes and
yeah.
such. So we show up there. Of course, we're taking all these trains. There aren't that many porters, or if any, there are no trolleys. So my memory of getting to Venice is at 2 a.m., dragging 6 heavy suitcases amongst the four of us,
Yeah.
getting to this beautiful place, of course, but then you're lugging all your stuff to the ferry, getting to your hotel getting dropped by the ferry to the other side at, like, I don't know, 3 a.m. This is pre Google Maps. You have some paper map,
Right.
trying to find a way to your hotel, asking some, random drunk tourist about where this place even is, showing up to the hotel at 4 a.m. And of course, our room is at the third floor, no elevator again.
Ah,
So we're dragging all this shit up all over again. And it's hot and humid during this time, even at that hour of the
yeah.
day. So it's actually not a pleasant memory at all of being in Venice. But I look back at it and I just crack up that, this is sort of a movie.
Right.
And I remember I even said to my parents that, have you moved here or what? Like, why do you have so much stuff? This is ridiculous. So we still laugh about it. But, again, like you said, or like we talked about memory, I remember that fondly, honestly, even though in the moment it was excruciating. But I want to go back to Venice and sort of do it for real and maybe find my own little red glass goblet this time.
Oh. Yeah, I've only been to Venice. Is that the only time you've been there? Just once?
Yep.
Yeah, I've only been to Venice once too. It was in high school. For I was in a singing group in high school, and we were doing a European tour, and we were there for about 2 days. And I want to go back again because spent most of my time trying to find. So the movie Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, there's a famous sequence in Venice with a church that they go into, and then they come out of like a sewer grate in front of this church. I spent most of my time just trying to find that church. And this again was pre Google Maps. Like I was like, where's the filming locations? Like I didn't really, I would kind of regret not focusing more on like the city itself and just be like, oh, I'm in Venice. It's like, okay, where's that filming location? Like that's what I want to find. So I definitely want to go back myself too. But yeah, getting to the film, I agree with everything you said. Like I'm a huge David Lean fan. This is a fantastic film. One that I had seen a little later in my Lean appreciation. Focus more on his larger epics. This is something I was going back and trying to fill in some gaps. So I saw this in college on DVD for the first time. It just, I mean, the Technicolor, like the look of Venice in this is so beautiful. But what I think this movie does such a great job of doing is it like a lot of the themes, if not all of them that we've talked about already, through the other movies we've explored are all like inside of this movie in a way. And I think this film too, even more so than anything we've talked about as well, really captures the experience of the traveler. Like you feel like you're a tourist in watching this film because she is acting like a tourist, for better or for worse, in all those different situations. Even the first 20 minutes or so, all she is like she's so focused about taking photos. She's not really like experiencing much of anything.
Like the old age Insta person.
Yeah. It was funny.
Everything. I'm like, what are you doing, Jane? Get over with it.
Exactly. So I was thinking like, man, they complain now about like people, you're always on your iPhone, like Instagram and everything. Well, like 50, 60 years ago, there were people still with those little Insta cameras. So this is not a new problem.
By the way, a giant camera, which makes a terrible annoying sound, which she's like rotating all the time. I'm like,
yeah. Yeah. So like it captures all those things that are still, going on today. I mean, even the themes we were talking about in all these movies of like, oh, it's the checklist people. Like those are the folks from, Ohio that she meets. And they're always like, oh, we schedule our free time in the schedule. It's like, oh my God. And I think she's a little bit like that too in the beginning, honestly, like her character. And then as she kind of opens up and lets the city kind of get a hold of her, and then she meets the gentleman who she falls in love with, I think then she's really experiencing the true city and is growing as a person too. But then there's also that, the sadder part of it of like a vacation doesn't last forever, and you might have a little like fling, with a gentleman in Venice, but you can't take him back home. This isn't your life. Like you got to go back to that. So there is that sadness at the end of the film. Actually is really sad, I feel like, when she leaves. I think all the themes we talked about are encapsulated in this film. And, I'm actually not a big Katherine Hepburn fan. I appreciate her more than I like her, but I think this is easily one of her best performances.
Agreed.
She brings so much to this character that is all this backstory that you don't ever explain, but you understand it in her performance.
Totally.
So it's fantastic film. And like I said, just hits all the notes of all the themes we talked about. So I'm glad you put it on the list.
I'm so glad you love this movie. And yeah, to kind of the last thing that you were saying, you have to go back to your real life, but I think travel ever so little changes you.
Yes.
Like I feel like came out of her comfort zone. She tried something, she took a chance, and there were many bumps along the way when she finds out, oh, he's married, or oh, the goblet is not real, or whatever. Her tendency is to like go back and retreat in her shell, like, not okay, hand is burned, let's just go back. But then she comes back, and I feel like she's taking that with her now, that I hope Jane is going to take more risks and more chances, even if she gets bitten or gets her hand burnt, which is what travel does. It opens you up a little bit to possibility and chance. And you, to your point of growth, you really see that. And you see that in her face when she's on the train leaving. Such a good movie.
No, it's fantastic.
What's your number one?
So my number one is The Trip to Spain from 2017, directed by Michael Winterbaum, starring Steve Coogan, Rob Brydon. The summary of this film is actors Steve Coogan and Rob Brydon embark on a 6-part episodic road trip through Europe. This time they're in Spain, sampling the restaurants, eateries, and sights along the way. So this movie, and why I put this on the list and why it's my number one, it really, for me, like, captures the perfect like travel experience and what I enjoy out of travel. So it's being with great friends or family, experiencing a culture through mainly food. And really just again shows about that travel is very important of who you travel with as much as where you go. So I know you were mentioning in the previous film solo travel. So I've done that a couple times, but very, very rarely. And I think Summertime does a great job of the limited amount of time I have traveled alone. It does capture that a lot. And I think this movie is sort of the other side of it, is just traveling with a companion, like a good friend or a good family member, and how that is really just what, for me, makes travel even better. You're there experiencing something new, but you're with someone who, you know, you're close with, experiencing that together. And I think, you know, this movie, again, they go around to different restaurants. And two, like, I think what I like about this film is as well, like they're in Spain and they're going to all these restaurants, but it's not like they're eating, you know, typical, like, quote unquote, like Spanish food that you'd be getting in a restaurant elsewhere. It's food that is, you know, very unique to that region through a particular chef, maybe taking a modern take on something, so that it's very, very unique. I love finding that too, when you go to a place where, yeah, you want to try the best pasta. If it might be in Italy, okay, great. But you want to find something that's not just the same type of dish you would get if you were in Little Italy. You want to find like what is very unique to this country now. And the restaurants that they go to in this show, like the type of cuisines they eat, are not something you typically, you know, would assume you'd find in a Spanish restaurant, you know, outside of Spain. So I really like that as well. And also, you know, this movie is shot like pseudo documentary style with a lot of improv dialogue. So it's very sort of like free flowing, meandering randomness. You know, they capture not just they're at a site, experience something. It's the trip to get there, the car ride, and just the little dialogue you might have in a hotel lobby. So it's all of these little things in travel of just those bonding experiences that you get when you're traveling, especially with someone, that isn't just you're at the Coliseum and that's the thing that you remember. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's, oh, that long car ride we took to get to so-and-so. You know, yeah, you could have been anywhere, but you happen to be traveling, you know, the German countryside, and you're there with your friend having a conversation or some banter or learning something about them. And I think this movie does a great job of that as well. And, you know, similar to what you were mentioning with the previous pick too, like sometimes the real life does come into play as well. You know, Steve Coogan's always getting kind of phone calls. He's dealing with what his life is and his career is like back in the UK where he's from. So you can't ever really escape that, which is definitely something, as much as you try when you're traveling, you know, the real world and your back home life, especially now with all this email and Slacks and text messaging, you really can't fully cut off. And I think this does a good job of that too. So yeah, I think again, it really encapsulates that perfect type of trip for me. And actually I'd seen this film and I'd never really been that interested in going to Spain. And after seeing this, I planned a trip. Actually booked one of the restaurants that they went to. It was like you had to book 3 months out in advance, get up at 2 a.m. to get there. And I had the reservation. Really excited about the whole trip to Spain, but then COVID happened and then the whole thing obviously did not happen. But this is just another movie that literally like inspired me to want to go to a place that was never really high on my list for some reason. But after seeing this, like, I got to go to Spain. And I still hope to go at some point now that travel, like, knock on wood, like COVID seems to be winding down and travel's opening back up again and things. But yeah, just really do love this film, and also really hilarious too. I find it very funny.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, we've done mini travels together, not a big one, but obviously food and good drink is, you know, our thing. So, I mean, you know, you're one of the few people, you and Tracy, that I would want to go and do a trip like this for sure. So, you know, this movie captures that perfectly. I actually honestly have not had too much of experience doing a big trip that spans over multiple days with a lot of people or family members. I have some, but I want to do more of that. So, you know, hopefully now that things are opening up, like you said, you know, we can do more of that and such. So yeah, excited for that. Yeah, as a movie, you know, when the first Trip movie came out, I think it felt super novel to me as like a travel log, like you said, and a documentary, and, you know, their jokes and their banter, their relationship, but using that as a lens to kind of view the place that they're in, all of that just felt really fresh and new. I had not seen this one until preparing for the podcast. Somehow I missed this one, so I watched it. And I don't know, maybe the formula if you will, has now maybe lost its charm for me. At least the evening I watch this movie, hopefully it'll come back to me. So I don't know. I sort of like, and I already know this, like it is meandering and it is the
Hmm.
point of the movie, but I found myself sort of disengaging quite a bit watching this movie, and I felt that the place and the food and such was not, been given the kind of attention that I would normally want, because I wanted to see more of what is happening. And also, one thing that they all usually don't do much of in these movies is that, they don't really appreciate what is happening or the food to a whole lot. Every once in a
Hmm.
while, they'll take a break from their impressions to say, oh, this is fun, this is kind
Yeah.
of cool. But it's sort of left to you, really, to kind of savor whatever is being shown to you. So I don't know, juxtaposing this movie with all the other movies that I was watching, where the characters were really put in the front seat of enjoying what they were enjoying and sort of expressing that so effusively, this movie felt very cold
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
in that regard. But again, I know that is the point. It's sort of, left to you really as a viewer to kind of take in all of that. So yeah, did it make me want to go to Spain? For sure. Did it make me want to try all that food? For sure. But I don't know, it also left me a little bit cold because I just felt like they weren't in the moment
Right.
enjoying it that much, and that took away something from it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think maybe for me, like I relate to that in a way of like when you're there actually experiencing it, it's sometimes hard to always be like, whoa, I'm
True.
like in front of this. It's especially when you're going with like a friend or a family member, a lot of it just ends up being hanging out and you just happen to be hanging out and now you're in Spain as opposed to, you know, in like a suburb of wherever you live. And rarely on those trips, sometimes you really do feel like that weight of, wow, I'm actually like in this place. And it's not till you like, then when you leave, right, and go back and think back on that, you only remember those like larger moments.
Right.
And all the smaller stuff sometimes, aren't because they don't maybe, again, you could experience it anywhere. So yeah, I'm not at all surprised by that reaction. Like for me, that's what I think makes this movie special in terms of capturing that side of the travel, because it is meant to, it's a document, it's mockumentary essentially.
Right.
So it's not meant to be very like cinematic and like put a big,
Yeah.
kind of
No,
exclamation
it
point on
doesn't
it like
have to
the other
be.
films.
If for up to me, I would just change the proportions slightly. Where
Okay.
do your thing, talk
Yeah.
your thing. That's sort of what real is. But I mean, come on, when you walk into a place that the way it looks,
Yeah.
as a regular human, you are going to remark at it. If
Hmm.
you put something strange or what have you, you are going to remark at it. Not all the time,
Right.
but more than that they do. And I don't know, I don't remember all the trip movies so distinctly in my head, but I just felt like this one did even lesser of that part, because in some of the other movies I sort of have vague memories in my head of them actually really appreciating where they're at.
Mm.
But again, to your point, maybe they've done so many of these trips, no pun intended, that it's sort of now old news. Maybe
Right.
that in itself is a sort of a meta commentary of sorts. So
That's true. And these are edited down TV seasons. So each of these
right.
movies were also like 6 episodes of a show. So perhaps
True.
when they got to this point, they were focusing more on what they think an audience would want, which is the
Right.
banter, and they cut a lot of the other stuff out that there was in the show. But I'd have to like put both side by side with a fine tooth comb to figure that out. But
That's a good point. Yeah.
maybe
Because
that's what it is. I don't know.
because
So
I would love a few more just lazy shots or just,
check out the show.
something.
Yeah, maybe check out the show and see if that
Maybe I need to check
maybe
out the
resonates
show.
better with you. Cool. Okay, so are any didn't quite make it on your list?
Yeah. So I was trying really hard not to have all Europe movies, which you might have
Yeah.
noticed.
Uh-huh.
But I couldn't really find any. I just sort of say something about my fascination and desire to keep going back to Europe.
Uh-huh.
And perhaps there aren't that many good movies that are made outside. That's probably the other thing, perhaps, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, Talented Mr. Ripley was on
Mm.
the list. Um, that was the big one that I dropped, I would say.
Okay.
And
Okay.
some of the other Bourne movies, the Bond movies that we were talking about for those, globe-trotting passport pictures. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, pretty similar. Like, there's a lot of Bond movies that are, again, really great travel logs. They could have made it on there. European Vacation, which is a movie that I also really find funny. I think it captures a lot of the silly parts of travel. Lost in Translation, which actually is not in Europe. This is
that's a great one.
Japan. Sideways, and then Into the Wild were the ones that didn't make it, but for various reasons.
Into the Wild.
Yes.
That would be a very different take on travel.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. But great. Well, hope everyone enjoyed today's episode. Maybe inspired you to think back to trips that you've taken, or maybe put some more potential destinations on your list now that, again, knock on wood, hopefully travel is coming back to the world as COVID seems to be on its way out. And yeah, just please make sure to like and subscribe, share around our podcast. We're always trying to grow our listenership, and hope you come back for the next episode. It's been a great discussion today, Karan.
Likewise. Thank you all for listening, and get those passports out.
That's right. Get ready. Cool. See you later.
Bye.